The fluorescent lights of Massachusetts General Hospital hummed their familiar tune as Leah Torres pulled off her N95 mask for the first time in 12 hours. Her scrubs clung to her body, damp with sweat from another grueling shift in the cardiac unit. February in Boston was unforgiving, and the walk from the hospital to her aging Honda Civic felt like a marathon. She caught her reflection in the car window and quickly looked away, a practiced motion she'd perfected over the years. The city lights blurred through her windshield as she drove through the slush-covered streets of Dorchester, past the familiar storefronts where English and Spanish competed for space on weathered signs. Her apartment building stood like a tired sentinel on Blue Hill Avenue, its brick facade darkened by decades of New England winters. The elevator was broken again, and Leah gripped the railing as she climbed to the third floor, her knees protesting with each step. Inside her apartment, the smell of her mother's pozole lingered from yesterday's visit, a reminder of the family dinner she'd missed. The answering machine blinked with 3 messages, all from her mother, each progressively more concerned about whether she was eating properly. Leah collapsed onto her reinforced couch, her body sinking into the cushions as she scrolled through her phone. Instagram's algorithm had learned her patterns well, serving up a parade of transformation videos, each one featuring someone who'd conquered what she couldn't. The comment sections were battlegrounds where strangers dissected bodies like specimens, praising discipline and condemning weakness with equal fervor. She closed the app and opened her work email instead, finding a reminder about the upcoming staff wellness initiative, complete with a BMI chart that classified her existence as a medical emergency. Her phone buzzed with a text from Nico. "Saw your car outside, coming up with leftover tamales from Mom. Don't pretend you're asleep." Her younger brother had a way of cutting through her defenses with the precision of a surgeon. At 24, Nico worked at a community center in Roxbury, teaching coding to kids who reminded him of their younger selves, first-generation Americans navigating between worlds. The knock came exactly 3 minutes later, and Leah hauled herself up to answer. "Jesus, Leah, you look exhausted," Nico said, pushing past her with the aluminum-wrapped plate. His Boston College sweatshirt was speckled with rain, and his dark hair fell into his eyes the same way their fathers used to. "When's the last time you ate something that wasn't from a vending machine?" "I eat," Leah protested, though the empty takeout containers stacked by her trash told a different story. The truth was that eating had become a minefield of shame and necessity, each meal a negotiation between hunger and guilt. Nico heated the tamales in her microwave, the familiar sound of the appliance mixing with the distant sirens that provided Boston's nighttime soundtrack. "Mom's worried about you," he said, not looking at her directly. "She keeps asking if you're taking care of yourself, especially after—" He trailed off, but they both knew he meant after their father's death 2 years ago. Diabetes and heart disease had taken Edmundo Torres at 58, leaving behind a family that still set a place for him at Sunday dinners. "I'm fine," Leah said, the lie sliding out as easily as her hospital badge from its clip. "Just tired. The unit's been crazy with all the post-holiday cardiac events." She didn't mention that she'd been assigned to 3 codes that week, all involving patients whose bodies looked like prophecies of her own future. Nico set the plate in front of her, the masa and pork filling steaming in the cool apartment air. "You know what Dad would say," he started, but Leah cut him off. "Please don't. He'd say you're carrying too much, Hermana. Not just," he gestured vaguely at her body, "but everything. The job, Mom, me, you can't save everyone if you can't save yourself." The tamales tasted like childhood, like Sunday mornings when their apartment in East Boston was filled with relatives and gossip and the sound of Vicente Fernandez on the radio. Back when her body was just a body, not a battlefield or a cautionary tale. Nico stayed for another hour, talking about his kids at the center, about the girl who'd gotten into MIT, about anything except the elephant in the room that was Leah's health. After he left, Leah stood in front of her bathroom mirror, really looking for the first time in weeks. The woman staring back at her wore exhaustion like a second skin. Her dark hair, usually pulled back in a practical bun, hung limp around her face. Her scrub top stretched across her chest and belly, the fabric working harder than it was designed to. She lifted her shirt and saw the deep red marks where her waistband had dug in during her shift, the skin underneath pale and soft. The scale in the corner of her bathroom hadn't been touched in months, covered by a towel like a shameful secret. Tonight, she pulled off the towel and stepped on, watching the digital numbers climb and climb until they settled on a number that made her stomach drop. 412 pounds. The number seemed impossible, like a typo in her own life story. She stepped off and on again, but the scale remained grimly honest. Her phone buzzed on the counter and she grabbed it, desperate for distraction. A notification from TikTok showed someone had tagged her in a video. Her blood ran cold as she opened it. There she was, filmed from behind as she'd bent over to help a patient that morning, her body taking up most of the frame. The caption read, "When your nurse needs medical attention more than you do," with crying, laughing emojis. The video already had 30,000 views and climbing. Leah sank to the bathroom floor, the cold tile pressing against her legs as she read the comments. Strangers dissected her existence with surgical precision, debating whether she was a hypocrite or just lazy, whether she deserved sympathy or tough love. Someone had found her LinkedIn and posted her full name. Another claimed to be a patient who'd recognized the hospital. Her professional life, carefully separated from her personal struggles, was now collapsing into a single, viral moment of humiliation. The video had reached 2 million views by morning. Leah called in sick to work, her voice cracking as she lied to her supervisor about food poisoning. Outside her window, Boston was waking up to a grey Thursday, commuters trudging through the remnants of yesterday's snow. Her phone hadn't stopped buzzing since dawn, messages flooding in from colleagues, distant relatives, and numbers she didn't recognize. She turned it off and sat in her kitchen, watching the coffee maker drip its slow rhythm, trying to pretend the world hadn't shifted on its axis. The knock at her door came at 9:30, sharp and insistent. Through the peephole, she saw a woman in her 30s, athletically built with short-cropped hair and arms that suggested intimate familiarity with heavy weights. She wore a black jacket with Valdez Boxing embroidered on the chest. "Leah Torres, my name's Valentina Valdez. Your brother sent me. I'm not interested in whatever you're selling," Leah said through the door. "I'm not selling anything. Nico's worried about you. He trains at my gym. Said you might need someone to talk to who gets it." Valentina's voice had a slight South Boston edge, softened by something that might have been compassion. "I saw the video. People are assholes, but hiding won't make them go away." Against her better judgment, Leah opened the door. Valentina didn't flinch at her appearance, didn't do the quick scan and judge that Leah had learned to recognize in milliseconds. "Can I come in? I brought coffee from Dunkin'. Nico said you're a large regular. 2 sugars." They sat at Leah's small kitchen table, the one her parents had bought at a yard sale in Revere 20 years ago. Valentina didn't fill the silence with platitudes or motivational speeches. She just sat, sipping her coffee, until Leah finally spoke. "Why are you really here?" "Because 5 years ago I was 300 pounds and drunk most nights," Valentina said matter-of-factly. "Different story, same shit. Someone filmed me falling down outside a bar in Southie. Video went viral as fat chick fails. Charming, right? I wanted to disappear. Instead, I got angry. Anger's more useful than shame if you point it in the right direction." "I'm not angry," Leah said. "I'm tired. Bullshit. You're furious. At the person who filmed you, at yourself, at the whole damn system that makes you work yourself to death while telling you you're not worthy of basic respect. The question is, what you're going to do with that fury." Before Leah could respond, her phone rang. She'd forgotten she'd turned it back on. The caller ID showed an unknown number with a Los Angeles area code. Against her better judgment, she answered. "Ms. Torres, this is Rebecca Walsh from Breakthrough Productions. We produce transformation content for several major networks and streaming platforms. We've seen your video, and we think you have an incredible story to tell. I'm not interested in... Hear me out. We're offering a full documentary series. 8 episodes following your journey, full medical support, nutritionist, trainer, therapist, the works, plus $100,000 upfront, more based on viewership. You'd be helping millions of people who struggle with the same issues. Leah's hand tightened on the phone. $100,000 would wipe out her student loans, help her mother with the mortgage, maybe even let her take time off to focus on her health. I need to think about it. Of course. But Leah, the internet has already started your story. You can either let them write it, or you can take control of the narrative. I'll email you the details. After she hung up, Valentina was studying her with dark eyes that missed nothing. Let me guess. Reality TV wants to turn you into inspiration porn. It's a lot of money. It's always a lot of money. That's how they get you. Come to my gym tomorrow, just to look around. No cameras, no bullshit. Just you and some heavy bags that won't judge you for shit. That evening, Leah's mother arrived unannounced, carrying enough food to feed a small army. Elena Torres was a force of nature compressed into 5 feet 2 inches. Her grey-streaked hair pulled back in the same style she'd worn since the 80s. She took one look at her daughter and pulled her into a hug that smelled like cilantro and Suavitel fabric softener. "Mija, Nico told me about the video," she said in Spanish, their private language of comfort. "Those people don't know you. They don't know how you held your father's hand through every dialysis appointment, how you work doubles to send money to your cousins in Guadalajara, how you give yourself to everyone but yourself. Maybe that's the problem, Mom." Elena busied herself in the kitchen, heating up chicken tinga and rice, her movements efficient from decades of practice. "You know what your father said before he died? He said his only regret was not seeing the ocean more. Not that he didn't lose weight or exercise more, just that he didn't see the ocean. The body is temporary, Mija, but the life inside it, that's what matters. The body still has to carry the life," Leah said softly. "Then make it strong enough to carry it, but not for them, for those strangers on the computer, for you, for the life you want to live." That night, Leah read through the contract Rebecca had sent. 16 pages of legal language that essentially signed away her privacy for the promise of transformation. The proposed title was Heavy Burden, A Nurse's Journey from Morbid Obesity to Health. They'd already storyboarded her life into digestible segments, complete with planned emotional breakdowns and triumph montages. Her existence reduced to a narrative arc designed for maximum advertising revenue. She closed the laptop and looked at the business card Valentina had left. Valdez Boxing, where fighters are forged, not fixed. No website, just an address in Dorchester and a phone number. Outside her window, Boston glittered with its usual indifferent beauty, a city that had seen too much history to care about one woman's viral moment of shame. The gym occupied a converted warehouse on Hancock Street, wedged between a Caribbean market and an auto repair shop. The February wind cut through Leah's jacket as she stood outside, watching people stream in and out through the tagged metal door. The windows were covered with faded posters of local fighters, their faces frozen in moments of victory that felt like artifacts from another world. She'd driven past this building 100 times on her way to work, never imagining herself walking through its doors. Inside, the space opened up into controlled chaos. Heavy bags swayed from chains, their leather surfaces worn smooth by thousands of impacts. The air smelled like sweat and determination and the faint hint of pine sol. In one corner, a woman in hijab worked combinations on a speed bag with mechanical precision. Near the ring, an older man with arms like tree trunks coached a teenager through footwork drills. Nobody looked up when Leah entered, too focused on their own battles to care about a newcomer. Valentina emerged from an office, wearing the same no-nonsense expression from yesterday. "You came? Good. First rule, nobody here gives a shit about your weight. They care if you show up, if you work, If you respect the space, that's it. She handed Leah a pair of hand wraps. We start with basics. Learning to wrap your hands is like learning to respect yourself. Do it wrong, you get hurt. Do it right, you protect what matters. For the next hour, Valentina taught her the ritual of preparation. How to loop the cloth between her fingers, around her wrists, creating armor from fabric and intention. The simple act of wrapping her hands felt like a meditation, each wrap a small promise to herself. When they finally approached a heavy bag, Leah's body was already trembling from the warm-up, muscles she'd forgotten existed, announcing themselves with sharp protests. Don't think about hitting hard, Valentina instructed. Think about hitting true. Power comes from your whole body, not just your arms. Plant your feet, rotate from your hips, let the force travel up through your core. The first punch felt awkward, her fist glancing off the bag with barely a sound. The second was better. By the 10th, she could feel something shifting, not just in her body but in her mind. Each impact sent vibrations up her arm, little shock waves that felt like awakening. Halfway through the session, her phone buzzed with another call from Rebecca Walsh. Leah let it go to voicemail. The producer had been calling twice a day, each message more urgent than the last. The window of opportunity was closing, she said. Other people wanted their story told. The viral moment would fade, and with it, the chance for redemption that America loved to watch. You thinking about taking their deal? Valentina asked, noticing her distraction. The money could change everything for my family. Could also change everything for you. And not in ways you want. Valentina adjusted Leah's stance, pushing her shoulders back. I had a fighter once, talented kid from Matapan, got offered a deal to be on one of those tough love weight loss shows. They promised him everything. Know what they delivered? Edited footage that made him look lazy and weak, manufactured drama with other contestants. And when he injured his knee pushing too hard for the cameras, they dropped him without covering the medical bills. That evening, Leah met Nico at their mother's apartment in East Boston. The three-family house had been in the neighborhood since the 1920s, surviving waves of immigration that had transformed the area from Italian to Latino. Their mother had prepared a feast, as if food could somehow solve the problem that food had created. The irony wasn't lost on any of them, but tradition was tradition. And Elena Torres expressed love through carefully seasoned meat and perfectly steamed rice. The producer called me, Nico said, helping himself to carnitas. Wanted to know if I'd appear on the show as the supportive brother. Offered me $5,000 just to sign the release. What did you tell them? That they could take their money and shove it up there. Nicolas, their mother interrupted, though her eyes showed approval. They're vultures, Leah. They don't care about your health. They care about ratings. You're not a person to them. You're content. Leah pushed food around her plate, her appetite gone. Maybe being content is better than being invisible, or worse, being visible for all the wrong reasons. At least with the show, I'd have some control. Would you? Eleanor asked quietly. Or would you just be trading one type of judgment for another? That night, Leah couldn't sleep. She pulled up the video again, though she'd promised herself she wouldn't. The comments had evolved from cruel to bizarrely personal. Someone had created a Twitter account in her name, posting fake updates about her supposed transformation. Another person had started a GoFundMe without her permission, claiming to raise money for her weight loss surgery. Her image had been turned into a meme, her body photoshopped into increasingly absurd situations. She existed now as public property, her humanity dissolved into pixels and punchlines. At 3 a.m, she found herself researching weight loss surgery, scrolling through before and after photos that looked like magic tricks. The surgery center websites promised new lives, new selves, new possibilities. All it took was $20,000 she didn't have and the willingness to have her stomach surgically altered. The risks were listed in small print, buried beneath testimonials from people whose lives had been transformed in ways that seemed too perfect to be real. Her work email dinged with a message from HR. They'd seen the video, of course. While they supported her personal journey, they were concerned about the hospital's image. Perhaps she'd like to take some time off. Consider their employee wellness program? The subtext was clear. Fix yourself or find yourself unemployed. The cardiac unit where she'd worked for 5 years, where she'd held hands with dying patients and celebrated with families when loved ones pulled through, now saw her as a liability. She called Valentina at dawn, knowing the trainer would be awake. "I don't know what to do. Everything feels impossible." "Then make it possible. One thing at a time. Can you come to the gym today?" "I have to work." "After?" "I'll be exhausted." "Good. You'll be too tired to overthink." Sometimes that's exactly what we need. 3 weeks had passed since the video changed everything, and Leah's life had developed a new rhythm. Morning shifts at the hospital, where colleagues either avoided eye contact or offered unsolicited diet advice. Evenings at Valdez Boxing, where her body learned to move in ways it had forgotten were possible. The producer's calls had stopped after Leah's final refusal, but the internet's interest in her story hadn't faded. Someone had started a Reddit thread tracking her supposed progress, analyzing security footage from the hospital parking lot to determine if she'd lost weight. It was a Tuesday evening in March when everything shifted again. Leah was working the bag, her form finally starting to feel natural when a young woman approached with a camera phone. "Oh my God, are you the nurse from TikTok? Can I get a video? This is so inspiring." Before Leah could respond, Valentina stepped between them. "This is a private gym, members only. You need to leave. I'm just trying to support her journey. People want to consume her struggle like it's entertainment. Get out before I help you find the door." The woman left, but the damage was done. Other gym members were staring, suddenly seeing Leah not as another fighter finding her strength, but as the viral sensation they'd scrolled past on their feeds. Leah unwrapped her hands and headed for the door, but Valentina caught her arm. "You run now, they win." "They've already won. I'm a joke." "No, you're a woman who's been turned into a commodity without your consent. There's a difference, and the only way to take back power is to refuse to play their game." That night, Leah sat with her mother and Nico in the kitchen where they'd shared 1,000 meals. Elena had made mole, the complex sauce that took 2 days to prepare properly, a recipe passed down from her grandmother in Puebla. The ritual of cooking it was an act of love that couldn't be reduced to calories or macros. "I got fired today," Leah said quietly. "They called it a mutual decision to part ways, but we all know what it really was." Nico's face darkened. "They can't do that. It's discrimination." "They can and they did. At-will employment. They don't have to give a reason." Leah took a bite of the mole, its layers of flavor a reminder that some things couldn't be simplified. The official story is restructuring. The real story is that patients were requesting different nurses. My body made them uncomfortable. Eleanor reached across the table and took her daughter's hand. "What will you do?" "I don't know. My whole identity was wrapped up in being a nurse, taking care of other people. Without that, I don't know who I am." "You're still you, Mija, just without the job that was killing you slowly." Over the next days, Leah found herself with time she hadn't had in years. She walked through Franklin Park in the morning when the paths were empty except for dog walkers and joggers who nodded in solidarity. She cooked real meals instead of grabbing whatever was available in the hospital cafeteria. She went to the gym in the middle of the day when it was quiet enough to hear her own breath as she worked. Valentina introduced her to other members of the gym, people with their own stories of transformation that had nothing to do with before and after photos. There was Marcus, a veteran who'd lost his leg in Afghanistan and found peace in the rhythm of training. Angela, a social worker who'd started boxing after leaving an abusive marriage. Tommy, a recovering addict who treated the gym like church, a place of confession and redemption. "Everyone here is fighting something," Valentina explained. "Your battle just happens to be more visible, but that doesn't make it more or less valid than anyone else's." A month into her unemployment, an unexpected call came from a clinic in Roxbury. They'd seen the news about her situation, the director explained, and they had an opening for a nurse practitioner. The pay was less than the hospital, but they believed in second chances. More importantly, they served a community that understood what it meant to be judged by appearance rather than character. "Why would you hire me?" Leah asked during the interview. "You've seen the video. You know what people say about me." Dr. Patricia Williams, the clinic director, leaned back in her chair. "I've seen a lot of videos. I've also seen your employment records, your patient satisfaction scores, your dedication to serving immigrant communities. The internet sees your body. I see your work. Which do you think matters more to the families who come here?" Leah started at the clinic the following Monday. The building was old, the equipment dated, but the waiting room was full of faces that looked like her family's. Spanish and Haitian Creole mixed with English in a symphony of need and care. Her first patient was a woman from Guatemala, diabetic and frightened, who relaxed visibly when Leah spoke to her in Spanish. Her second was a teenager struggling with depression who'd gained weight on antidepressants and felt trapped between mental health and physical health. "They make me choose," the girl said. "Be thin and suicidal or fat and functional. Nobody talks about how that feels." "I know," Leah said, and meant it. "Let's talk about finding a balance that works for you, not for anyone else." 3 months after the video that started everything, Leah stood in front of the mirror in the gym bathroom. She hadn't weighed herself since that night on her bathroom floor. The number didn't matter anymore, or rather, it mattered less than other numbers. The number of rounds she could go on the bag without stopping, the number of flights of stairs she could climb without gasping, the number of patients she'd helped find their own version of health that had nothing to do with fitting into society's narrow definition of acceptable bodies. Rebecca Walsh called one last time, offering a modified deal. "A documentary about body positivity," she said, "about challenging stereotypes, about the reality of living in a larger body while working in healthcare. The money was less, but the control would be hers." "I appreciate the offer," Leah said, "but I'm not interested in being anyone's story, but my own." That evening, Valentina asked her to help train a new member, a woman who'd driven from Worcester after seeing Leah's story online. Not the original video, but a blog post someone had written about the nurse who'd refused to let the internet shame her into disappearing. "I don't know if I'm ready to help anyone else," Leah said. "Nobody ever is. But sometimes the best teachers are the ones still learning." The woman, Sarah, was nervous, apologizing for her body before she'd even thrown a punch. Leah recognized the shame, the way Sarah tried to make herself smaller despite her size. She helped her wrap her hands, the same ritual Valentina had taught her, each loop a small act of self-protection. "The first punch is the hardest," Leah told her, "not because of the physical effort, but because it means you're choosing to fight, not against your body, but for it." Sarah's first punch was tentative, barely disturbing the bag, but she smiled, a real smile that had nothing to do with cameras or performance. Leah stood beside her, demonstrating the proper form, and together they found a rhythm. Not the rhythm of transformation narratives or inspiration porn, but the simple rhythm of two women learning to take up space in a world that would prefer they shrink. As spring arrived in Boston, painting the city in reluctant shades of green, Leah's life settled into something that felt like peace. She worked at the clinic, serving her community with a deeper understanding of how health was about more than numbers on a scale. She trained at the gym, her body growing stronger in ways that had nothing to do with size. She shared meals with her family, honoring both tradition and health in ways that felt sustainable. The video still existed somewhere in the digital ether, accumulating views and comments from strangers who thought they knew her story. But the real story, the one that mattered, was written in the daily choice to show up, to work, to fight, to refuse the narrative that others had written for her. On a warm April evening, Leah stood on Carson Beach in Southie, watching the sun set over the harbor. Her father had been right about the ocean. It didn't care about the size of the bodies that stood before it. It just rolled on, endless and indifferent, and somehow comforting in its constancy. She thought about calling Rebecca Walsh back, not to accept her offer, but to suggest a different story, one about a healthcare system that failed its workers, about the intersection of culture and health, about the violence of viral fame and the quiet revolution of refusing to perform your pain for public consumption. But then she decided that some stories didn't need to be told to everyone. Some victories were private, measured not in pounds lost or views gained, but in the ability to walk up 3 flights of stairs to your apartment and still have enough breath to sing along to the radio, in the courage to wear short sleeves on a warm day, in the peace of eating a meal without calculating its moral value. Her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number, another producer probably, or someone else trying to capitalize on her moment of unwanted fame. She deleted it without reading and walked back along the beach, her footprints temporary marks in the sand that the tide would soon erase. Tomorrow she would wake up, go to work, go to the gym, share dinner with her family. She would continue the slow, unglamorous work of living in her body without apology. The transformation the internet had wanted to see hadn't happened. She hadn't become thin. She hadn't become inspiration. She hadn't become a cautionary tale or a success story or any of the neat categories that made for good content. She'd simply become more herself, which was both less dramatic and more revolutionary than anything a camera could capture. In the end, that was the most shocking transformation of all.